All right, we're on Daf Yud from Ralph. 8 lines from the bottom. I'm Rabbi Yosef Bar Babun. Rabbi Shimon Lakish Hava Avar Kume Sidra. Shimon Lakish passes around the base meadows. Shama Kalon Karye Hain Psuka. And hear the voice of people reading and following Psukim. Vayizbuchu Hashem Zvachim. Sacrifice of Kosh Baruch Hu Zvachim, which are Shlomim. Vayalu Olos Hashem L'machras Hayamahu. And they sacrificed Olos as well to Kosh Baruch Hu the following day. Omar, so Rish Lakish darshaned on this. He said, Man the mafsiko kebei Shammai, if he puts a psik, and a snachta, I guess, into these psukim, it's like Beishamai. So that would mean that you read it, Vayizbulu Chul Hashem Zvachim, period. In other words, today they sacrifice Shlomim. Vayalu Olos Hashem L'machas, but they didn't do Olos, because on Yom Tov you can't do Olos. It's talking about on Shavuos. You couldn't do Olos on Yom Tov because Beishamai holds you're not allowed to. So that they did the next day. That's like Beishamai. Man de Kari Le Kulu, he who reads the whole pasuk straight, that's like Beis Hillel, meaning that they did both the Olos and the Shlomim the next day. So you read the whole pasuk, V'yizbuchu Hashem Zvachim V'alu Olos Hashem, both L'machras Hayom. So there's tomorrow. Wait a minute. Nicha Olos L'machras Hayom. I understand that Olos they did the following day. However, Ushlamim L'machras Hayom. They ain't Shlamim Boim K'Beis Shammai. I don't understand. Even like Beis Shammai, who says why couldn't they do? Why couldn't they do Shlomim? Excuse me. Why couldn't they Shlomim on the same day? Now that makes really no sense. The Mashbiach changes the gears here. He says that really the kasha is not a Beis Shammai. The kasha is not like Beis Shammai. The kasha is like Beis Hillel. He says there are two kashas here. He says first kasha is you're allowed to do both zvachim. You're really allowed to do both Shlomim and Olos going to be so on Yom Tov itself, right? Because they're both Yom Tov. So why they push off Shlomim the next day? Why they push off Olos the next day, right? So the kasha is not like Vein Shloim Boin K'Beis Shammai. It should be Vein Shlomi Ve Olos Boin K'Beis Hillel. Why they push off both of them till the next day? They should do them both on Yom Tov itself. So Rabbi Yisrael Abun, David Meis Batzeres. David died that Shavuos. Let's say about the Shavuos that David died. But you koisa onanim, and all of Am Yisrael were onanim because they were all involved in the kfura of David, because he was, or being waiting for the kfura of David, and because he was the melech, and therefore none of them were allowed to make karbanos that day, so they were makriv l'machar. It's interesting. Chiddush that all of Am Yisrael, even the Kohanim, have been an onain for a king. Not that I'm aware of. But I guess that it was an emotional thing concerning David, that none of them felt like sacrificing korbanos. But I don't think that halacha is like that actually. Ma'aseh Bilal Zaka, there's a ma'aseh with Hillel. This is brought to the Bible as well. Shehevi Olasul Azara, he brought us Ola to the Azara. The Samach Aleh. It did smich on the oilo. So there are two things that Beis Shammai doesn't like about that. A, it's an ola, and Beis Shammai holds you can't bring olos on Yom Tov. And B, he did smich on Beis Shammai holds you not do smich on Yom Tov. So the Chibur of Talmidei Shammai, so Talmidei Shammai started gathering around him and started saying, "What's going on here? What are you doing?" So he's kashkesh biznova. So he started waving around its tail. Amalun, he said to him, Runekevahi. No, it's not a Ola, it's an Akeva. It's a female. Ushlomi, I brought it as a Shlomim. Now, the truth is, it wasn't a female, it was a male, and he intended to make an Ola, but he managed by waving the tail to, push him off, that they wouldn't check so closely. Seeing him advarim, and he kept on talking to them, and they went away. Lachiyomim, sometime later, Gavri Yadosh Beis Shammai, the hands of Beis Shammai became stronger in the Beis Hamikdash. I guess they were more crying from Beis Shammai. And they wanted to pass halacha like Beis Shammai. Now you're not allowed to bring olos on Yom Tov. So Hayasham Bava ben Bute, Mitamidi Beis Shammai, he was one of the students of Beis Shammai, but there Shalocha Beis Hillel, he knew that halacha was supposed to be like Beis Hillel in this matter. So once he came on Yontif to the Azara, and he found the Azara was empty because nobody was sacrificing karbanos, because they were trying to paskin like Beis Shammai that you don't bring olos on Yontif. So he said, Yishbu Batem Sha'el, it's a fascinating thing. He was a Talmud of Beis Shammai, but he cursed the house of Shammai. He said, may the houses be desolate. Sheishimu Beis Elokeinu, that they made God's house desolate. So what he do? He went and sent for 3,000 sheep, mitzon kedar, from the best sheep. Kedar is a certain place which causes what has wonderful sheep. Bikru mumin, and he checked and none of the mumin. And he stood them on Har Bayis. Amalem, he said to his fellow Jews, Shmuni Achai Beis Yisrael, listen to me, my fellow brethren from the house of Israel. Call me Shurot to Yavi Olos, I guess Yav Call me Shurot to anybody who wants Yavi Olos, Yavi V'Yismoch. Even he should do smicha on them. Yavi Shlamim, if you want to bring Shlamim, Yavi V'Yismoch, and come and do smicha. So a lot of people came and brought these karbanos as olos and did smicha, which is of course like Beis Hillel, not like Beis Shammai. But so Rashad Nikva Allah Beis Hillel, at that time Allah was set for all time like Beis Hillel, they can do both smicha and bring olos on Yontif. The law Amar Adam Davar, nobody said anything. In other words, nobody could withstand that halacha being like Beis Hillel. Amrei B'Ter Bar Elazar Hada Amarah, this teaches us. The Carbon Eda says here that the gears are supposed to be that Hada Kasa B'Sheirusa. If you have a cup which you want to eat in a meal and you want it to be hot, so then Boy Mula requires a lot of wood to heat up initially. Boy Mula Samor, so it needs a lot of coals, and the kisa mineu bay. It's not sure exactly what I'm not sure exactly what the word the kisa is supposed to be, or the Korbanei doesn't really address it, but he says that once it's actually, he ends this mashal after the word the kisa, whatever that word is supposed to be. But however it's supposed to be read, what it means to say is that when you want to heat up a cup to begin with, it has to have a lot of wood. Once it's already hot, so to preserve its heat, you don't need that much wood, just to maintain the heat. Much less coal is necessary. So too. Initially, to Paskan Lachal pills, they needed a dramatic deed. Once that dramatic deed is done, so the maintaining halacha Beis Hillel for all time is not so hard. But the initial Paskaning, Baal ben Buta had to do this amazing thing with these 3,000 sheep. And then he says another mashal, which is Mineu Bay, Kol Gumad Lo Kavya B'Shaita Lo Kavya. Any coal which was didn't burn at its proper time, it's much harder to burn with later on. Meaning, since Hillel was quiet initially, or he didn't confront the students of Shammai, not that he necessarily could have, but since he didn't confront them initially, so therefore Baal ben Buta had to do this much more dramatic thing later on. So if you use a piece of coal when it's really hot, then you don't have to do very much in order to make it light a fire. But later on, the coals die down. It takes much more activity in order to resurrect it. Shuv Ma'asev Echel Mitamidei Hillel is another Ma'asev of students of Hillel. Shehevi Olasul Azara, he brought his Ola to Azara. Samach Aleh, and he did smicha on it. Bro Echel Mitamidei Shammai, and one of the students of Shammai saw him, and this time having learned the lesson of a hot coal, as we just said, Amar Lei. So there's one of the students of Shammai said to him, Mazu Smicha, what Smicha are you doing? Amar Lei, so he said, Mazu Shasika, what's this? You should be silent, meaning he rebuked him. Shitko ben Zifa v'holach lo, he silenced him with a rebuke, and this student from the house of Shammai walked away, and the halacha was passing like this. Okay, halacha hey. With me? Alright. Beishamri lo yecha modem chami l'raglov elin kein yuruim hoirulim shtia. Beishamri says you're not allowed to heat water for your feet unless they're suitable to drink. Beisil matir and Beisil permits it regardless, or it's going to limit that chiddush. Voice of Medura, a person can make a bonfire in order to heat oneself up with mischami kenegdan yontif. Pasula train pitrin. Now there are two interpretations here, meaning that the Mishnah has two different perspectives on Beisham, one for Beisham and one for Beisil. According to Beisham, the only time you're permitted to heat up water for yourself, for your feet rather, is Vushashasaman. You're allowed to marbe b'shurim. If you heat water up to drink, actually, then you're allowed to take a little bit allowed to take some of it for your feet. However, according to Beisilo, you don't actually have to drink it. You actually only have to heat it up. Once you heat it, they only have to be suitable to drink. Once it's suitable to drink, whether you drank or not, that's considered to be enough. So Beisil, actually according to Yerushalmi, is not as makel as it seems from the Mishnah. According to the Mishnah, it seems you could just go ahead and do it directly for washing your feet. Beisil holds it has to be potable water. It can't just heat up any water. It's got to be water which hypothetically, mitoch shutra l'tzarach l'chol nefesh, it's mutar also shelo l'tzarach l'chol nefesh, but it's got to be something which you theoretically could use. Okay, now, those who medur mischami kenegda, divrei hakol, everybody agrees to this, but vushi akumku keneged ha-medura. It's only if you have a pot actually opposite the flame, which sounds like, it's Beishamai previously that it has to be roy actually to use to eat. So so they propose a different interpretation of our Mishnah, which is Adait in the Beishamai only, Vushia Kumkum Keneged Hamadur. According to Beishamai, it has to be that the pot is opposite the fire. Adait in the Beisil, according to Beisil, if you ain't a Kumkum Keneged Hamadur, it makes no difference. It's still perfectly permissible because you are allowed to do it as long as the fire is suitable, of course, to heat up food, which, of course, every fire is. If you have hot water which is heated up b'yontif, and hot water which is heated up from before Shabbos, Rabbi Shmuel had a machlokas. You can use them to wash your hands, your face, hands, and feet. The other one said, you can do your whole body, but limb by limb, not the whole body together, because I think it's gzera merchatzos, because it looks like you're taking a bath, and then you might come to heat up water directly, so you have to do it limb by limb. We didn't know who said what. Since we have another statement named B'Shul, he says explicitly that it can do your hand, your face, your hands, and your feet. Have a Rav. It must be the Rav's the one who says you can do your whole body limb by limb. And one philosopher asked Bar Kapara, we had this already elsewhere in Yerushalmi, and or there's another version that Avleit Shal Levi Srisa, Avleit asked Levi the eunuch, he asked him, Mutu Lishtosva, I don't remember what we said last time we had this, whether the Levi Srisa is actually our Levi, the Amora, or some other Levi. Certainly it's not clear from here. But what he asked him is, Mutu Lishtosva, Asul Lerchotz, what's the difference? You're allowed to drink and you're not allowed to wash? Why is there a difference? The Amar Lei, so he said, so Amar Lei, so he said to respond to him, Im tira, very interesting response. He said, Im tira soris mischabek im ishtacha. If you see a eunuch embracing your wife, Shema in a raloch, does it not cause you bad feeling? So Amarei, so this Avlate said, it does cause me bad feeling. Amarei, so Levi said, Umachi lochklum, does it bother you at all? Meaning, are you lacking, machim, it's miloshan maka. Does it afflict you at all? In other words, she can't do anything with him. So Amarei, so he said, nevertheless, Shalot Isparit, she shouldn't be protesting. So says the Gemara here, says Levi, Amarei hacha shelo yispartu. Here too, it's a Gzeir Rabbanan not to heat up water to washing, even though hypothetically it's just as much a need as actually drinking, because we don't want to be preachastic. In other words, we don't want to be so mako, because it might lead people to actually heat up water for purposes which are not necessary. So once Avlate left, Amlo Tamidov, so the student said to Levi, Rabbi, Lezed Ochisa Bekana. And he pushed over the stick. In other words, he gave him a reason which is not true. Ma'at meshib, lanu ma'at meshib. When you come back to us and want to tell us what tak is the chiluk, so he said about look, it has to be something which can be consumed by everybody. Now, I would say the emphasis is on ye'achel and not yerchatz, right? Because rechitza is not the same thing as achila. But the carbonated doesn't say that way. The rechitza the carbonated says the emphasis is on l'chol nefesh, and taking a bath is not l'chol nefesh. In other words, everybody has to wash their hands, face, and their legs. But l'chol nefesh, that's the extent of l'chol nefesh. Not everybody takes baths, so therefore they weren't matir anything more than that. Okay, Allah Chavav. Shloshet Dvarim Ram Gamliel Machmir Chdivrei Beis Shammai. The three things Ram Gamliel is Machmir like Beis Shammai, which are Ein Tom Yisachamin Miyotav L'Shabbos. Now this is not cholent, even though chamin is usually mashma cholent, right? Any hot dish. Here specifically hot water. You can't prepare hot water for Yotav L'Shabbos, like an urn, to keep it hot. Vein Zokvinas Amnar, if a menorah falls upon Yontif, you can't put it back together again. Vein often Piton Gritos, one cannot bake thick breads, good thick breads on Yontif. El Rakikin, only thin breads. Why? The Gemara is going to explain. Amra Gamliel said me, a man Shabesaba, the entire always in my father's house. Lo often Piton Gritos, they wouldn't make thick bread on Yontif. Ella Rikikin, only thin bread. Almost said, Manasa Besavicha, what can we do for your father's house? Shu Machmir Nalatzmam, they're machmir for themselves on Mekilin HaKoisor, for all the Jews they were Mako. So that's your problem, not ours. Leosophin Piton Gritzos V'chari, they let everybody else bake thick and good bread. Okay, so Abba Barav Chuna Amar, Hadar the Tamer Shloah Solo Erev Tavshilin. All the Rangamli was machmir not to leave chamin from Yontif to Shabbos. So if done Erev Tavshilin, I'm also Erev Tavshilin, made Erev Tavshilin from before Yontif, mutter, certainly mutter. So ask them more, mabin tavshil, mabin chamin. The question is, it's the assumption of our Mishnah is that even without Erev Tavshilin, you can cook a dish on Yontif and put it in hatamana for the next day if it's food. It's only water which you cannot. What's the difference between food and water? So it says, Tavshil darko lochel mimenu. A tavshil, cooked dish of food, you might eat from it on Yontif itself, right? If you don't eat from today, so eat it tomorrow. But it looks like you're making it for Yontif itself. It's not a problem that it looks like you're preparing for Shabbos. But the hot water, for some reason, they weren't going to use anymore on Yontif, so it must be they leave that for tomorrow, and therefore that's achana from Yontif to Shabbos, and there, I guess, there's no chazil orchim or anything of that sort, and therefore you can't do them unless you have an Erev Tavshilin. Vein zokvines a menorah b'Yontif. But you're not allowed to set back a menorah on Yom Tif. That's a menorah which is made out of segments, and the segments fall apart, they scatter or something. I have a menorah she'ing it's a menorah which is not made of segments, but rather one piece, and it falls down. Lo b'dah, it's not a problem. So says Maria, you know what? That's nice, but l'maisa people are not makel. Because you should know the students of Rabbi Yossi Avi Yossi, they were sitting naflis minarta kumehon, and the menorah fell in front of them. And everybody ran away in order not to put it back together again. I'm sorry, it wasn't menorah. This was a menorah of prakim. It was a menorah made out of segments, and the halacha, our Mishnah said, is that it's mutter to put it back together again. So Ran Gamliel, who was machmir, not to put it back together again. But the students of Rabbi Yossi didn't want to do a ma'isa to be matir it, because l'maisa, Ran Gamliel said it's no good. So therefore they all ran away. None of them was willing to be the one to do the ma'isa to paskin like Rabbanan over Ran Gamliel. But it seems like only in that case, because in the other ones it seems everybody was mekel. Enofin Piton greets an elder kikin. What was logical Gamliel not to allow thick breads? Bitoshad miyagos, an interesting reason. It's a lot bigger pain to cook thin bread, to bake thin breads. Since it's a big pain for him, a toil, afu in oifel tzarku, you're not going to bake more than necessary for that day. So it's a xerish, only bake whatever you need. Rabbi Yacha Shamallah Minadog. Now, the language the Mishnah uses that you can make the Rabbanan argue, they say everything is the tzarech of the day, you're allowed to bake whatever kind of bread you want, but I guess it's covered Yom Tif, and the bread they bring down here that it's the more bread you bake, the better the bread is, the oven is better, the more bread that there is in there. So you're allowed to bake, the Mishnah said, gritzin and chori. What's chori? Rabbi Yaakov Shamal Aminado, Machori Ha'afa Godal Zeh. What's this great anger? So Chori, he learns to be like a flaring of the nose, a greatness. So too the bread is a great big bread. That's one interpretation of the word Chori. Rabbanan Shamal Aminado. Rabbanan understand the word Chori from the we have in Bracious, the Sarah Ofin. It says Vinei Shlosha Saleh Chori Al Roshi. He said that in his dream he saw 3 baskets of chori, which must be good bread, obviously, and it's said, so from here we see that it's a good kind of bread. Okay, that's all Rabbi Gamliel's chumras. Now we have his kulas. Afu amar shloshet dvarim l'hakel. He said 3 kulas. What are they? Mechabdi ben amitos. You're allowed to sweep between the beds on Shabbos or Yom Tif, and we're not afraid you're going to be mashver gumos, that you're going to smooth the floor. And the reason why we're not afraid of that is because just a little bit of space between the beds. Now, beds does not mean beds in the bedroom. It means the beds they used to recline on while they're eating. So it got particularly dirty there, and they didn't do that much cleaning, so it was okay. Excuse me. Also, you put out incense or to make a fragrance on Yotzef. And they allowed you also to make a roasted whole lamb on the night of Pesach, become him acid, all these things. Okay, so basically, you mechabi ben amitos. Some Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Tzadok, pamim harbi achati yitzer on Gamliel. True, this I ate many times on Gamliel. V'lo mechabi ben amitos. They wouldn't sweep between the beds. Elastinim are parsim agabi arts. They had sheets on the ground while they're eating. They came in shaharachim yitzim once the guests stopped eating, or you kaipunos them, they would fold them, take them away, and obviously the floor was clean underneath. That's what they did. It looked like they swept, but of course they didn't sweep. So the Rabbanan said he came. That's what he did. Up Shabbos the time Marsos came. So no problem even doing that on Shabbos, because that's not really sweeping. It's just removing the sheets. Similarly, Shabbos Gamliel Yuma Machnis Zamugmar B'Megufa. He used to bring in the mugmar in a pan. Megufa usually means the top of a barrel, but here means a large pan, and he used to burn it on Yontif. I wait many times on Gamliel. They wouldn't burn it in a pan. Ela pardiskis hoy mashnim erev yontif. It was like a summing box. It was a vessel which had many holes in it, and used to smoke up in the middle of this vessel very much, full of smoke, and then they used to stop up the holes of this vessel with all sorts of stoppers. Once the guests came in the next day, so they would open the stoppers and the fragrance would flood the room. So he said, if that's the case, Shabbos will turn Lasos Kain. Was even allowed to do so on Shabbos because one is not actually burning anything, just making new fragrance. One is allowed to make this roasted lamb on the night of Pesach. What is this roasted lamb? So kulotz, we have this of course many times in Pesachim. Kulotzli, when it's completely roasted, rosho al krav, al kirbo, its head, on its legs, meaning its legs inside of al kirbo and inside its innards. Shorak mixas ubisha mixas. If, however, he didn't roast the whole thing, he roasted part of it and cooked part of it, ain't a gedima kulos. That's not a gedima kulos. That's okay. Machnisim gedima kulos b'leil yontav rishon shechag. Now you can eat a gedima kulos on the first night of Sukkot, v'leil yontav achron shel Pesach, and on the seventh night of Pesach. But on the first night of Pesach you can't. But machnisim egam kulos b'leil yontav rishon shel Pesach. You're allowed to eat, of course, a young calf which is completely roasted. Avolo gedimukuls. We, of course, are machmir, because not to eat anything roasted, but they were makel on roasted beef, suppose as long as it wasn't roast lamb. Tani Rabbi Yisrael said, Tudus Yishromi, Tudus of Rome, Hini Galin Anshi Romi, he had a custom with the people of Rome, Shuochlim Gedim Kulasim B'Psachim, they used to eat the roasted lambs on the night of Pesach. Shoch L'chami, so L'chami said the message, Romulo, and they said, Ilui Shat Todus, Lo Yidum and Adimoscha. If you were not Todus, you think we wouldn't put you in Nidui? You'd have to stop this minhag immediately. Mao Todus, what was Todus being mild that they didn't want to put him in Cherem? So a very famous reason we had, of course, in Psachim. Amrei B'Charina, Dahava, Mishaleh, Parnasas, and Rabbana used to support the rabbis. So why are they going to put him in Cherem? He used to support them. Lonim Tzis, so says Umar, why nevertheless they really want to put him in Cherem? Because Lonim Tzis, maybe it's a rhyme de Achil, it's Kochim B'chutz, since he brings people to think they're in Kochim B'chutz, should call maybe it's a rhyming de Achil, Kochim B'chutz. Anybody causes the masses to eat Kochim outside or anything similar to Kochim, Tzorach neither really should be put in Cherem. Okay, Shloshet Dvarim, Rabbi Gamli, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Azariah, Matir, V'Chachomim Osir. The three things Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah allowed and Chachomim forbade. For us, the Yitzis B'Ritzur Sheben Karnea, his cow used to go out on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, same thing, with a belt, meaning a string between its horns. Used to comb his animal on Yom Tov. The Shokin is apilpulin, and he used to grind peppers in their grinders. Rabbi Yehuda says, not allowed to comb a animal with a fine tooth comb because it makes a wound. Avocado like use a thick comb. Chachamim can't use a fine comb, nor a thick comb as well. Rabbi Barbara, Rabbi Shmuel, Terei, and Omi, they both said, even if you're putting that little belt or little string on the horns of the animal in order to pull it with that belt, it's also because cows don't usually get pulled by a belt between their horns. So it's considered to be superfluous shmira for a cow, and that's why it's forbidden. Right? Bar B'Shem Shmuel said, look, that's only true if you tied it onto the horn. But what if you actually drilled a hole in the horn, of course from before Shabbos, and put it in? Then it's mutter, because now it becomes an integral part of the animal. Rabbi Yisrael said, Kashisi Kami Rabbi Ba, I asked Rabbi Ba if this is mutter. Rabbi said no. He said, Lotrin Ela Hanaka B'Chatam. Only Hanaka, which is I think a donkey of some sort, only it you can have it use a nose ring on, because the nose ring was an integral part of how you dragged it around. But not a cow. Even though you drilled it in, you're forbidden to use that on Shabbos in order to pull it around. Rabbi Zir B'Shem Shmuel said, well, that's of course if it's controllable, but shor she's korah, if it's a wild ox, then Yotze B'Prum B'Yishlo can go out with a bit, because that bit now is essential for it. Rabbi Seder Shubakol Nogukin, that was the minhag in Bavel. Rabbi Yachon and Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi B'Shem Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov Bar B'Shem Rabbi Tanchum, Rabbi Chia said, Chamor she's korah, similarly a wild donkey, Yotze B'Prum B'Yishlo can go out with its bit. Rabbi Yehuda B'Shem Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Chia said, Kelev Yotze B'Soga Shalom. You can take out a dog in its collar. Even lahakos, but it depends. If you're just using the collar, so I guess you used to use the collar like to beat it. You used to take off the collar and whip it with the collar. Then of course it's also because you're having the dog carry the collar around for you to be able to whip it at your convenience. That's like it's carrying a load. But imishu shlo lacho apsaro, if however it's that the afsar means the leash, which is attached to the collar, should not bite into the dog. Not that the dog shouldn't bite it, but it should not bite into the dog and disturb the dog. So in other words, you would attach the leash to the collar as opposed to wrap it around the dog's neck and somebody was uncomfortable to it. So if the leash is for the collar is for the purpose of the leash, then it's mutter, then it's okay. Okay, now getting back to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, what did he do wrong? The Chazal were upset at him. Geniva said, Omar, he never did it lamaisa that his cow went out with this belt between its horns. He just taught it as halacha. So Rabbi Yehuda Butzayer's boy, he questioned this. He said, if he just was teaching halacha that way and it never did a lamaisa, harder than shlo bratzon chachamim. So what's the language that he did it shlo bratzon chachamim? If he wants to argue in halacha, that's nice. He's entitled to do so. Can't say shlo bratzon chachamim if it's just shakla v'tarya. He never actually did it l'maisa. So it says the Gemara, Tana Rabbi Yehuda Bar Pazi, and along these lines, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Pazi, the Bargulay has said, Amrullah has said, or Amor B'Bein Aseinu, either stand or either leave us, or have your ben karana, take the belt from between its horns. So you see quite clearly, Amrei Shemachis Kenegdon. Obviously, well, actually, that's the answer. I take that back. So, Rabbi, first Rabbi Pazi said he must have done a Maisa because obviously they said take it away. So Rabbi Serbun, no, not he did a Maisa, but he was being very adamant. He was not just connected. He was very firm in his opposition. So Chachamim got firm in their opposition as well, but it was all just in the abstract. It wasn't that anybody did that he did it l'maisa. Now, in fact, Amar Rabbi China, really, he never did l'maisa, but Pam Achas, one time it happened, Yotzos, I guess inadvertently his cow went out against the Ratzon of Chachamim. Yishchiu Shina min atzomos, and his teeth got black because he fasted so many times to be mechaper for having gone against the Ratzon of Chachamim. Minatainis, the Shechina minatzomos minatainis, from the amount of fast and the fasting which he did. Rabbi Yidi said, the Chutra Ishto Havos. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's wife's name was Chutra, like a stick. So the cow belonged to his wife Chutra. And how do we know that his wife is called his egla, his calf? So lule, because it says lule charashtem beglasi lo mitzasem chidasi. Shimshon said that had you not plowed with my calf, meaning had you not plied my wife to find the answer to my riddle, which I asked you, he asked the Plishim riddle, lo mitzas chidas, you wouldn't have found the answer to my riddle. So actually, his wife went out with one of the types of jewelry, which are not permitted for going out on Shabbos, and there they said that it was his wife, and they called his wife his calf because of this pasuk, which indicates that a wife is called in a mashal a calf, and they were upset. So it was actually seems according to Pashutran, more in that case it was jewelry. Now getting back to the shot that it was actually a calf, literally, Taman remained in Bavel, they said, and this is in the Bavli, Shcheinaso Haisa. It was his neighbor's calf. So he's punished because his neighbor's calf went out with a belt. Rabbi Kiris, the Irma, Melamed teaches the Shkomish then he has a capacity to be moiche on a wrongdoing. Made him moiche and does not make him made him a mach and doesn't make him a cha. Kalkulu pliyabo, we give him the detriment as if he did the thing wrong himself. Ezu kirud, what's the kirud? The fine tooth comb. There's this fine tooth combs which make a wound. Kirtzuf elagdam, that's large tooth comb, which don't make a wound. Chachomrim ein mekardim v'aflo mekartzifim, ein mekardim with the fine tooth comb shlo yavo dechabur, in order not to make a wound. Lo mekartzifim, they can't do the large tooth comb shlo yavo dechabur, because it seems that causes hair to come out, and we don't want that either. Shabbeser Shochin is a pilpulin v'rechaim shlem, they would grind peppers. Amar Blazer Tzorok Pamachas. Once my father ate Abraham Gamliel. They viewed in front of Ingerin, they brought him some sort of cooked dish with ground pepper in it, and it was obvious that it was ground on Yontif. So came Chetoman, so once my father tasted them, he wouldn't eat them anymore. Until Amar Lor Gamliel said to him, do not suspect we ground the pepper on Shabbat Yontif, even though we hold it's mutter. Me'erev Yontif and Shulchim, they were ground from before Yontif. Says Rabbi Yasser, Rabbi Tzadok K'shoyge Yitzhak Gamliel, v'yochal. Why can't, even though Rabbi Tzadok himself paskins, it's also to grind pepper on Yontif. But by Rabbi Gamliel paskins, it's mutter. So vis-a-vis Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Tzadok is like a shoygig, right? Meiser Shabbos ben Mezid, or Meiser Yontif ben Mezid is also, right? But Rabbi Gamliel holds it's mutter. So Rabbi Tzadok is no worse than somebody else who did Meiser Shabbos b'shogeg, and for you it's mutter. Why couldn't you eat it? They didn't want people to think that he paskins like Ram Gamliel, and it's matir, so therefore he wouldn't eat until he was told that it was done from before Yontif. Okay, Arichaim Shal people who want to talk about pepper grinders, even though it's not really directly relevant to Masechta Beitza. Let's mention that they have three components, and the three components are each tummy in and of themselves. Three kelim, Mishum Kli Kibul, the bottom which receives the ground spice is a Kli Kibul, is a receptacle, even though it's made out of wood, since it has a base kibul, it's Makabel Tumah. Mishum Kli Matchos, the top part, which has the grinder, is a metal vessel, and that's Matami obviously as well, even if it has no base kibul. Shum Kvara, between the grinder and the receptacle, there's mesh. That mesh is only allows the particles which are already ground to go down to the bottom. So even though that's made out of wood, and it shouldn't be Makabel Tumah because it's not a receptacle, nevertheless there's a Gzeir D'Rabbanan that all kivaras, all mesh, all sieves are Makabel Tumah, and the reason is because they look like a woven fabric. The woven fabric is Matami D'Oraisa, so therefore the wooden sieve, even though it's not a fabric, is also Matami D'Rabbanan. That's what it's about to say. Hatachta Mishum Kli Kibul, the bottom because it's receptacle, the alien, the upper part Mishum Kli Mafchos because it's metal, and Vayim Tzai Mishum Kvara because of the Gzeir D'Rabbanan of a Kvara. Okay, Agala Shokot, the wagon of a young child, like a young child's play wagon, like a stroller for a doll. Tamei Medras. It's Tamei Medras because the child supports himself on it. And if the child is a Zav, obviously not all children are Zavim, but if the child supports himself on it, it's like Medras HaZav. The tells b'Shabbos, it can be carried on Shabbos, not Muktzah, because it's a toy which can be used on Shabbos. Bein Nigras, but may not be dragged. It should be Ella Gabi Kelim. It says on the side the word Ella. Ella Gabi Kelim can't be dragged directly in the ground because it'll make a furrow in the ground. So this mission, like Rabbi Yehuda says, that making a furrow on the ground is also. We don't have Kol Kelim and Nigrorim. In fact, no vessels can be dragged on the ground. Chutz min ha'agola, except for a wagon, not a child's wagon, but a larger wagon. Because it presses the ground down and doesn't actually make a furrow. Okay, tiny lo yogur adam is amita vesakise vesavsavso vesakatedra. But should not drag a bed, a chair, a bench, or a large chair because he makes a furrow. Rabbi Shimon matir because Rabbi Shimon allows to Rabbi Shimon miskaveh. Rabbi Ba b'shem Rabbi Chuna, Rabbi Chagai b'shem Rabbi Zira, and Rabbi Yosef b'shem Rabbi Ilah say modim chachamim Rabbi Shimon. Chachamim could see to Rabbi Shimon, meaning Rabbi Huda would see to Rabbi Shimon, b'kisei sheraglo m'shukos petit, that if you have a chair which is sunk into, its legs are sunk into mud, shemutza tafu, you can pick it out of the mud and put it elsewhere. The reason that's permissible is because the side, even though it's in the mud, when you take it out, the sides are not going to slip back in, and the hole will remain intact. With the kabbalah, and therefore, similarly, mutzah avasir can put it back in the hole once you took it out, because that's not considered to be making a hole. The hole is already there, the hole will remain there sufficient. You can take it out and put it back. Rabbi Yosef said, we also learned elsewhere, Nitolim b'Shabbos, if you have turnips and radishes which are stored in the ground, so you can pick them up on Shabbos and put them back. It's not considered to be that you're making holes or breaking holes, because the hole remains more or less intact when you take the turnip out and when you put the turnip back. No. Who says that that's Rabbi Yehuda? The Rabbi Shimon. Maybe it's on Rabbi Shimon who allows it because he holds Rabbi Shimon miskaven his mutter. Rabbi Yossi said, Masnisa Amrakain. Our Mishnah indicates that in fact you can't paskin like Rabbi Ilah, even though it says Amrakain. It really means that Rabbi Ilah is not correct. That you cannot take any keli just out of the ground and put it back or anything of that sort, because it says the only time any of this is mutter is specifically where we know it's not going to leave a hole, or you're going to put it back in a hole. It's only you can take a wagon or push a wagon, because it's only going to press the ground in and not going to actually make holes or have anything to do with holes. Rabbi Yehuda is not matir anything to do with holes. If you have somebody who's matir holes, or you even taking something out of a hole and putting it back in, it's only Rabbi Shimon and not Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, thank you very much.